So resilience.
Resilience meant
forward ever, backwards never.
You have to get up.
It's being able to...
Yeah, doesn't resilience lead to burnout?
persistence.
But as long as you stick to it.
So that for me is what resilient community is all about.
When I think of resilience,
the old definition of resilience,
I would just call it the ability to...
Very tough game. And
so resilience for me means...
Resilience for me...
not giving up.
I think it's perseverance.
I think it's about giving yourself the grace to make mistakes and fail.
And I think especially for entrepreneurs and new business owners or people who are thinking of going into business, one thing one must really, I think, appreciate from the get-go is that you are going to face challenges. It is part and parcel of running a business. You cannot avoid this, no matter how smart, no matter how strategic you are, no matter how many resources you have at your disposal. What changes is what kind of issues or concerns you have to deal with. But the fact that you have to deal with challenges does not change. So if you go into business taking this into account and accepting this fact, when you do come face to face with these challenges, you know that it's not the end. It's just it's the nature of business. So it can help you continue where you would otherwise have, say, clocked out and said, I can't do this.
Well, Reyna Drake joins us today. She's a fantasy fiction author, a leadership coach, and a business development strategist. And she teaches a concept of dynamic growth. It's her passion, and she sees it as the single most powerful force available to us, each of us as individuals, personally and professionally as entrepreneurs. With years of experience and decades of academic research, Reyna guides her clients to kickstart their dynamic growth and to implement sustainable change. Her business is Lead and Thrive, and she challenges us to reimagine success. Can't wait for this conversation. In this episode, we're going to hear how ineffective leadership is what holds back a lot of businesses, and we're going to tap into what makes Reyna resilient. She has a 7-month-old as we record this, so we know there's a lot of resilience in that household. Reyna joins us from the beautiful Gold Coast in sunny Queensland, Australia. Welcome, Reyna.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's our privilege. Let's just talk about resilience right off the bat. What is resilience?
Yes.
What does that even mean to you?
To me, resilience really means having indomitable will. And I'll expand a little bit on that. To have an indomitable will is to have a will that cannot break. So even when you collapse, you are able to sustain your focus and you get back up. So with that, because in business, you will always have hurdles, things will come from the left field and take you out. And so, of course, with some strategy and planning, you can mitigate a lot of those risks. However, you cannot know what you do not know. And so having that indomitable will, or that will that does not break, regardless of what happens, is really, really important. So that's what, in my view, resilience means.
So is that something you decide to have, or is it something you train yourself into? How does one get indomitable will?
Well, I think it's very much, it's both. You decide to have it and then you train yourself, because you can say, I would like to be resilient, but if you do not take any steps to make yourself resilient, then it is not going to happen. So you do have to train yourself. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, it would take a lot of difficult situations and a few failures on your belt to develop that will. But so long as, I suppose, you have, you go into everything knowing that you will not give up no matter what, then when you do fall down, you can pick yourself back up.
Yeah, I hear you there on the failure. So you almost need the failures in order to learn the lessons to get stronger. right? Do you have a mindset
Absolutely.
around failure? Like, what does failure mean to you?
For me, failure is not an option. That's where I start, because it means that once things get tough, I cannot say, well, I'll accept, or I'll give up. Oh, I give up and this is too hard. I don't even go there anymore. But to be fair, I had to go through those times where I said, you know what, I give up. I can't do this anymore. Before I got to a point where I realized that no, 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 no. Whatever happens, failure is just not an option. So if something doesn't work out or you find yourself faced to a wall, then the primary thought in your mind or attitude should be, okay, what's next? What else can I do? What other strategies can I put in place? What other options do I have in order to get out of this or to achieve X? There's always a way. But because we have to be very mindful of our own mind, right? The mind is a powerful tool. It is a powerful machine. It can do so much for us. But with that power comes a bit of a drawback, because if we do not train it accurately, and if we do not take control of our own minds, it can lead us astray and it can get us into all kinds of trouble. So if you wire your mind to see issues or problems as a block, then it is really hard to find solutions when those issues do arise. So it's important to train your mind to see problems as opportunities as opposed to blocks. So, yeah.
Such an important conversation. And it's a real shift in thinking, isn't it? And here we are, as we record this, we're at the start of a new year. And, maybe this is an opportunity for people to kind of take stock and think that they might do something differently this year. And that something different could well be an internal shift in how do we perceive the world? How do we process what happens to us and happens for us?
Correct. Very much so. And I think especially for entrepreneurs and new business owners or people who are thinking of going into business, one thing one must really, I think, appreciate from the get-go is that you are going to face challenges. It is part and parcel of running a business. You cannot avoid this, no matter how smart, no matter how strategic you are, no matter how many resources you have at your disposal. What changes is what kind of issues or concerns you have to deal with. But the fact that you have to deal with challenges does not change. So if you go into business taking this into account and accepting this fact, when you do come face to face with these challenges, you know that it's not the end. It's just it's the nature of business. So it can help you continue where you would otherwise have, say, clocked out and said, I can't do this.
I think that type of attitude too helps take the emotion out of it. So
Absolutely.
when you can, pull the emotion out of the sting of a challenge and realize, oh, this is just something I have to deal with. It's not something that's meant to attack me. You can change your mindset around it. Yeah.
Yes,
that's great.
Correct.
I love that. Good.
Now, I was going to say that the other important thing is to see the business as an exercise in logic, right? Because business primarily functions on rationality. It's market dynamics. Everything is cold and hard. Now, that does not mean that we don't bring emotion and passion and feelings to the business. The way we do that can be our point of difference as opposed to our competitors, for instance, because if you approach business from a mechanistic perspective, you can lose a lot of people. You can lose a lot of customers. It is important to take the human factor into account, right? However, before you even get to that point, you need to acknowledge that business is mechanistic primarily. right? You have a product and you have to sell it, and this is how you have to sell it. This is the things that appeal to people. Do people want your what you have to offer? And how do you frame that offering such that it is appealing to your target audience? And how do you market? How do you get to this target audience? So it has a lot of mechanistic elements. And so if you understand that primarily business is mechanistic in nature, then it helps you accept the mechanistic feedback it gives you, the market gives you. For example, some customers don't like your product, or some have this complaint, or this particular, say, marketing strategy did not work. So you don't take it emotionally. You don't go, oh, I'm a failure. I didn't. No, it's just that, okay, this did not work. Something else can work. And what can I do differently? Or what did I do here that wasn't quite right? Or how can I pivot? And so I think that's an important factor when you're starting a business, understanding that it is mechanistic in nature. So do not go into it completely emotional. Understand because then that allows you to divorce your emotions a little bit from the function of the business. But when you're dealing with your customers and your clients, you can bring in the emotion and have that human element.
That's important. And I wish it's something that I had taken on board and taken to heart myself a decade or more ago, when I went through the very experience of feeling, well, a business that I was working, that I had created, I had to bring it to a close and sell off. And it felt like the deepest personal failure of my existence, because I hadn't made that separation. For me, that business was me. It was everything that, it was what I was worth. It was what, aside from the financial loss, which that's damaging in itself on many levels. But I think emotionally, if we just see our business as an entity, as a business, as something that we're working on, like a plant that you water and nurture and it grows, but that plant isn't you. And if that differential is clear, then I think we can get through anything.
Absolutely. And look, I know I sound great right now. Maybe I may not, but it sounds very good. Oh, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, feel this way or think this way, right? Because I've been there. So before I started thinking this way, I had to start from somewhere. And I started with the emotional element of things. Right. I didn't really see my business as a business so much as my brainchild. This was my baby. And that's how I called it. And of course, as you would know, or you'll be aware, language is really powerful. How you frame things in your mind and how you verbalize it is extremely powerful as to in dictating how your attitude is to that thing. So if you call something your baby and it's not working, you feel the loss even more personally. And so I appreciate that it's not easy to go from, especially if you're starting a business, because you need the passion, you need to have this feeling of creating something first before you even set up a business. So the difficulty is, how do you get foster that feeling in order to create a business that you love and that you would stick with, without then carrying that feeling through when you are running that business? It is not altogether clear how you can separate that, or at what point you should separate that. So take it with a grain of salt. Me sitting here saying, oh, do this and do that. But I do appreciate that it's not so straightforward and it's not so simple. But one thing that helped me differentiate was actually, I read a book called Extreme Ownership. And this was fundamental for a change in perspective, because it allowed me to see my business as a mission, as in a military mission. It's a book written by 2 US Marines, and they go through a host of mindsets and skills that leaders on the battlefield possess, and how those skills and mindsets are implemented. It's a brilliant book, and I would strongly recommend it. to any entrepreneur or anyone actually in life, because you can use these skills in your private life as well as in your business. But it allowed me to see my business as a military mission. And when you view it from that perspective, everything becomes called hard fact and logic. And it's important to repeat as well that this is not how you would deal with your clients. This is how you deal with your business, right? So with your clients, of course, you have to be more compassionate and understanding and make sure that you are opening your heart almost and understand that you're speaking to human beings, not just numbers on your zero checkbook, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, relationships are everything, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just going to ask you to go back to the beginning of your business and tell us a little bit about how you started out as an entrepreneur, because what you're talking about is a lot of things that you learn over experience and reading, like you said, and talking to others, and you grow as an entrepreneur. But in the beginning stages, we all kind of start out fumbling along and figuring it out.
Yeah.
What were those beginning years, months like for you?
I have to say that I had the privilege of having a golden start. I really did. For me, it was exciting. It was fun. So I came into business, almost I fell into it, if you will. I have a law and politics background. That's what I studied. But on the side, I am really a fantasy buff and nerd. And so I'm a bit more hairy-fairy. So I never felt like I would fit within the legal, let's say, machine, because I felt it was too cold for my liking. But I studied law because I thought, I want to change the world. And until I studied the law, I'm like, maybe the law and politics are the problem, you know. So I got a job with this gentleman who was a business strategist and had been so for 20 years. And he was a family friend at the time. So after writing a thesis that basically had me blacklisted from the law field, don't worry, my supervisor told me not to write it. And I said, wait, you're telling me not to do something? That's exactly what I'm going to do, you know? So anyway, yeah, I ended up started working with this gentleman, and he was an ex-Navy guy as well. So he had that militaristic approach to things. So it was really interesting and informative seeing the way he viewed people, the way he studied body language in order to inform how he dealt with individual clients, what pressure points or how to frame his delivery essentially. And after working with him for a while, an opportunity came up to coach a young girl. And because throughout my education and university years, I'd been in leadership roles and I've mentored other students, he thought, hey, I think this would be good for you. And he recommended me to this particular family. And once I started doing that, it just blew up. It just went from there because I started coaching this young girl. And then the mom came on board because she's like, I want in on this one. And then soon after, it happened to be a family that was quite well, I suppose they had a wealth of businesses. They had several businesses. And I started coaching their leaders and their managers. And yeah, the business sort of grew from there. And then it spread by word of mouth. And I got corporate gigs and, you know, yeah. So it was I have to say, it was pretty smooth sailing to begin with, and exciting and fun. So.
Well, you make it sound like smooth sailing, but when you talk about it, that takes a lot of bravery to step into the new spaces. And I'm sure that road had many bumps in it, but you, with your attitude and your approach, you just didn't even see them as a bump. You're just like, great, I'm going to jump this and keep going. So I love that. Yeah.
To be fair, there was a lot of there was some fear and anxiety. Admittedly, there was a lot of anxiety because it only took, in my view at the time, I thought it would only take one failure for the whole operation to explode and for me to end up upside down somewhere. But thankfully, I was so passionate about what I was doing, and I believed so strongly in the fact that that leadership was central to actually changing the world. I went from thinking, okay, I need to be in law and politics in order to change the world, to realizing that actually change can happen or needs to happen first at the individual level. And if you have individuals in society who have mastery over themselves, who understand how their own mind works, who understand what their trajectory in life is, what their purpose is, and have the discipline and, let's say, clarity to lead effectively in their lives and in whatever they're doing, then you will have a better society overall, because those individuals not only excel in their personal lives, they excel in their relationships, they will excel in their business or endeavors or jobs. And if they're excelling in those areas, then you know that the family is going to excel if everyone's doing it. If the family excels, the community excels, and it has this huge ripple effect. So I was, let's say, had a dogged pursuit, or a dogged attitude to making sure that every individual I met, I left being as a more effective leader with clarity and the purpose. So that did help me overlook a lot of the challenges that I faced.
Yeah, that's it right there. When you realize that what you do impacts other people, you get out of the perfectionism of yourself and into the I'm needed to help others. And I think that really helps you get through those challenges. But it's funny that when you said about, you thought just one failure was just going to wipe you out. I think that's a very common fear of most entrepreneurs, especially in the startup stage. It's just like one, client that doesn't pay me is going to wipe out my business, or one this that happens is going to, so you just have that constant like anxiety about it. But that's not really the reality, because it keeps going. It keeps going and you keep growing. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it will come back to how you pivot once you face those issues or those challenges. And often when it comes to the business itself, there's very little you cannot amend. The business is a really fluid structure, and you can mold it and shape it however you want to fit the way you do things. So you needn't really worry if you've structured your business in such a way that is not entirely functional or effective or efficient in the moment. That comes with time. You learn and you adapt and you amend things as you go. The scary part is, okay, clients. Oh my God, I've messed up this particular session with this client. Is that it? Have I lost my contract now? How do I bridge or have that client, or how do I recuperate that client? So to me, that was the biggest fear and that was the biggest challenge. And I found that being honest and being confident were two things that clients really appreciated, because particularly with what I do, I'm dealing with other business owners and managers. So they understand the difficulties and the pitfalls of running a business. They understand that mistakes happen. So if you're honest with them and say, look, sorry, that was my mistake, and then you're confident in recuperating and coming back with the adequate, with what they expected in the first place, or with an improved process, then they respond to that. They respond positively. And in fact, that can have them respect you even more, because they're like, wow, this person is real, and they can they can bond with you, knowing that, okay, my struggle is I'm not alone in my struggle. Even the person coaching me or helping me can also make a mistake. So that becomes actually a strength in your relationship with your client rather than a detriment.
True. So you teach dynamic growth in your business development strategies, and I'm looking to see what is dynamic growth, and some of what you were just talking about. Is that part of it?
Yeah, essentially, dynamic growth ultimately has two components. One, it focuses on tailoring the program to the specific client or customer. And on the other hand, it also focuses on how you mentally help that client grow. So, for one, I may have a client who is, let's say, who knows what they're good at and knows what they can make money from, but they may not know what is good for society or what they can do that can bring them money and that they're good at doing, but which will also be of benefit to the community. So that the way you would coach that client is different to someone who knows how they can help the community, but they don't know what they're good at. Right. So that's one element, tailoring the program to the individual. And then it would come down to that particular individual's way of learning and how they grow mentally. So people are different in the way they assimilate things. Some people grow more rapidly than others, and others find certain language or methodologies resonate with them, and for others it doesn't. So all of this you have to take on board when you are coaching a client. I should take you back a little bit and talk to you about one of the I suppose underlying structures of our delivery process. It's this concept called ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept meaning a purpose, basically the reason for being. And I don't know about you, but if you've met someone who doesn't know why they're doing what they're doing or where they're going with themselves, they cannot lead effectively. And you will find that they're rudderless and unsettled. And there is this sense of not knowing and anxiety just permeating everything they do. Now, when that individual is put in a position of power and leadership, then you find that attitude and that uncertainty about themselves and their own journey and where they're going in life permeate the way they lead, right? So what we do is we make sure, as part of a dynamic growth process, we make sure that our leaders understand what their purpose is. What are you here to do? It doesn't matter what position you're doing if you don't want to do that. I can teach you all the principles of effective leadership, how to manage staff effectively and get the most out of them. I can train you in a whole range of concepts and things and basically help you implement these. But it won't really take you anywhere if the whole time you're sitting going, I want to be on the beach. I don't want to be in an office. So first and foremost, we have to establish, where do you want to be? Do you want to be here to begin with? And is this your purpose? Is this where you want to be? And once we've established that, then we can train you in the tools and the skills you need to be an effective leader. But it's hard to separate these two, because essentially learning to figure out your purpose and your where you're going in life and how you're going to get there requires a fair bit of leadership as well.
You have a diagram on your website, Reyna, which I think describes it beautifully, and we can put it in the show notes for people. But just to kind of touch on it, there's 4 intersecting circles, and one is what you love. One is what the world needs. The other is what you can be paid for. And then the 4th one is what you're good at, which is interesting that what you love and what you're good at are even separate circles. So I think there's like a whole delightful concept there that we could unpack. But I guess, is that the way that you're helping people to define their purpose?
Correct. Because where these 4 things intersect, that's your purpose. I have a gripe with some of the messaging that we've had for the last few decades, especially to young people and to people in general, saying that follow your passion, right? That nothing is more important, right? Your passion is all it's at. Well, okay, if you don't need to feed your family And if you don't need to contribute to society or
exactly, right? I know it's one of those things that have driven me crazy too, or just find your purpose, but no one actually tells you how to find your purpose.
Correct.
There's no guidebook.
Correct.
Well, the property has a lot of books written on it, but no
Yeah.
clear path to finding it. But I like the way, and I've been fascinated by Ikigai for a while because of those intersections of not just
Absolutely.
what you love, but what you're good at, because that's something I
Yeah.
think people need to remember too. You got to be good at it. And then you
Yeah.
can really share it with the world and inspire others to get on board as an employee as you're building and scaling and all these things too.
Exactly right. And look, it doesn't mean that what you have you have to be good at what you have a passion for straight off the bat. That's not what we're saying here. But if you have a passion for something, you do have to be good at it. Ultimately, the chances are that you will have some skills in this area, but because that's the nature of passion, it drives you to pursue a particular thing. And so you tend to develop your skill, but it's important to make sure that it's not just having the feeling is not enough. Having the skills is also important, right? And having the skills as well is not enough. You also need to be able to be paid for it, and then that also is not enough. It has to have some positive use or value to your community and to society, because we don't find fulfillment in life by just doing things that we want for ourselves on our own. We are social beings, and you will be surprised how absolutely amazing you feel when what you're good at and you can get paid for it and you love doing it also happens to help people in the process. You will find that you will have that indomitable will we were discussing before becomes so easy to cultivate, because you have something beyond yourself, outside of yourself, that you are working towards. It's not just about yourself, and it makes it super easy to keep at it.
It's so true. And I could say, even in my own personal life, when I was a teenager, I loved art. Like, I was a really good artist, and I took every art class I could, and I stayed late every day at school to do art. And I wanted to figure out how could I wanted to have a career where I'd make enough money to live on, right? So that was the money part of it. What can I be paid for? I didn't want to be the starving artist. So I went into graphic design as a field because it was the way to do art, something people needed. So I figured that kind of out early on, and
Fantastic.
it was a good career choice. And then you grow and evolve as time goes on. But that's something I think young people, if any young people are listening, this is the thing you should look up. Figure out what your ikigai is and pursue that, because I think success will follow inevitably.
Absolutely. And when we mention success, it really, you start realizing that success starts becoming very personal, and you develop this personal definition for success, right? Rather than this external blanket view of what success is supposed to look like. Because when you're pursuing your ikigai, you realize that that's your success, and it's different. It may be completely different to what someone else's success is. Someone else's success might be $1 million home with a Jaguar in the parkway, and what have you, some gold watches, whatever. And your success might be sitting with someone and absolutely changing their lives, right? And sure, you might get paid for it, and you may just have an average home and whatever, but seeing that the impact you have on someone else could be your definition of success. So I think when you follow your ikigai, or when you figure it out, and then you develop the discipline to pursue it and persist in its pursuit, you really hit the jackpot. That's the best way I can put it. You hit the jackpot, because you find yourself that your work no longer feels like work, and you just have this drive, and nothing will, you find it. Things have to be really, really, really dark for you to even consider stopping.
Reyna, talking about the jackpot, I honestly think we hit the jackpot, by being able to have you on this podcast. Honestly, this has been so fun
Thank you.
and so informative. And of course, I'd love to talk for another hour, but we do keep these short and punchy so that people can get on and get great inspiration and wisdom. So thank you so much for being part of Resilient Entrepreneurs, and you've taught us so much, and sharing your wisdom. It's a gem. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was an absolute privilege and pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on Resilient Entrepreneurs, and please subscribe to this channel to be notified of each new episode. We love supporting entrepreneurs, especially with mindset, marketing, and motivation, which is why we feature entrepreneurs from all walks of life in various stages of business. We hope their stories will inspire and encourage you to keep doing what you do well with resilience. We've also created this space for an incredible community of business founders who meet weekly in our membership called the Level Up League. If you want to know more about it, look us up online at 241branding.com. See you next time.